Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Nancy and Paul O'Neill Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Anthony Williams, and I'm so humbled and proud to be serving as the head of school of the Neighborhood Academy. I began my career here at the school some 22 years ago, and I have witnessed the impact this school has made on the lives of each and every student who has stepped foot on this campus. Our mission is to break the cycle of generational poverty through education and to empower our students for college and citizenships. And we know that every student deserves a quality education. However, we also know that that simple task can come with many obstacles and barriers. Our families have a taxable income of $70,000 or less. 70% of our families have a taxable income of $35,000 or less. And 81% of our students, if not attending Neighborhood Academy, would attend a school that's deemed to be a low-performing school by the Department of Education. However, through the Neighborhood Academy, 100% of our students are admitted to college, and since this campus has been erected in 2011, 81% of our students graduate from college in 5 years or less. And I want to let you know that we have some fine scholars here at this school. And these young men behind me represent their peers. In particular, thank you. In particular, they represent their peers who have attended the all-male middle school program here at the Neighborhood Academy. You see, in 2015, our board of directors decided to launch a capital campaign to address an issue that we saw in our school, in our city, and throughout our nation as well, which was the underperformance of African American males. And in 2017, we opened up our doors to our all-male middle school program. And we have benefited greatly through the investment of that program. We've been able to strengthen our academic program. We have now honors courses. We have now AP classes. We have wonderful collaborations with various individuals and organizations throughout the city of Pittsburgh, such as the ability to offer a constitutional law course to our students through the University of Pittsburgh. Thanks to Point Park University, we're able to offer our students high school to college courses, as well as a mentoring program for first-generational college-bound students. And through a wonderful cooperative agreement that we have with Shadyside Academy, we're able to bond our communities together through competition and have wonderful memories with each other. Go Bulldogs. While addressing a great issue in which we observed and seen, inadvertently, we also left a group behind. In 2019, there was a report that was commissioned, and it was written, co-authored by 5 researchers through the University of Pittsburgh. The report was titled, Pittsburgh's Inequality Across Gender and Race. And this report illuminated so many challenges that our great city encounters. Some of those challenges were really impactful to certain groups within the city, in particular, the experience of Black women. And through the report, we learned that in the city of Pittsburgh, 97% of women are out of the labor force compared to other cities. And in regards to other cities, 90% of Black women in the city of Pittsburgh have lower medium income than similar cities. As we wrestled with the report and the realities of our city, we also thought to ourselves, how can we impact these realities? And in 2020, March that is, the pandemic happened. But as long as I've been a member of the school, and as long as I've known, we have never gotten tired of doing the right thing. So I'm happy to announce in the fall of last year, being 2022, our board of directors unanimously voted to include middle school girls into our middle school program. And if you could just join me in welcoming our inaugural class of middle school girls to the stage, please. Come on up, girls. Aren't they all so wonderful? But let me tell you, these girls are very intelligent, they're courageous, and they are so kind as well. And yes, that deserves a round of applause as well. And girls, if you just would join me in taking a moment and gazing into the audience just for a while. And when I speak oftentimes in worship, I speak upon the thousands of individuals who believe deeply in you. And this is a simple reflection of those folks who believe deeply in your future, your leadership, and all the wonderful things in which you would encounter. And to all my folks who are here in the audience today, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you so much for your belief in our students. Thank you so much for your commitment to our school. Because of you, we're able to serve 170 students currently. And in the next 2 years, we will increase our enrollment to 200 plus students. Because of you, we're able to build upon the foundation that was laid. And because of you, we're able to build out our future for our students today, tomorrow, and the years to come. You see, it's important now more than ever that we continue to build. Frederick Douglass Jr. once said, "It's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men." And that's what we do here at Neighborhood Academy. We build strong children. And now more than ever, it's very important that we continue to build. In order to do so, we're going to need your help. I'm going to need your help. It's very important for us to build. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce our board chair, Ed Howler, as well as Annie Westbrook, who's another board member here at Neighborhood Academy, and the chair of our development committee.
Thank you, Anthony. Welcome, everybody. Aren't these kids amazing? One more round of applause. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to keep it brief because we have a very amazing speaker. But as many of you know, this school, this facility is about 12 years old. And while it's going strong, our goal is to continue to grow. So as the school grows, we are going to embark on a campaign, and we're going to focus on a few initiatives. Number one, we're going to grow the footprint of the school. As we welcome girls fully into the middle school and we grow to 200 students, we're just going to need more space. Number two, we're going to focus on growing our science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM programs. We are going to offer our students opportunities that are on par with any school, public or private, within this region in that area. Thank you. Well, here's where you need to clap. We're going to grow support for our fabulous faculty and staff, as well as graduates of the Neighborhood Academy. Round of applause for the faculty and staff. And finally, we're going to continue to grow the long-term financial stability of the Neighborhood Academy, both for where it is today and where it's going in the future. Thank you. So before you clap with that, I'm going to introduce Annie Westbrook, our board member and the chair of the development committee for the board.
Thank you, Ed. This view is divine. We are so blessed. So many wonderful, familiar faces here, and so many new faces, and I'm trying to see you. That's why I'm shielding my eyes here. Don't take pictures while I'm shielding my eyes, please. As chair of the development committee, thank you for being here tonight. This is the most people we've had in this room ever. Thank you for supporting the Neighborhood Academy year in and year out. Thank you for your counsel. This school raises its nearly $5 million operating budget every single year. Our backbone is individual giving and EITC. Your support is relentless. Thank you. A sidebar for anyone who doesn't know what EITC means, ask someone at your table, get an answer tonight. As Dr. Williams and Ed Haller alluded, we are embarking on a capital campaign to further our mission, elevate our students and alum, and to retain and enrich our facility and our financial stability. We will seek your advice, your participation, and your encouragement. More to come. Thank you.
I want to take some time and recognize and acknowledge some individuals in the room. First and foremost, we have 2 elected officials in the room that I would like to pay a wonderful acknowledgement to and thank them for their service to our city and our state as well. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge our mayor, Mr. Mayor Ed Gainey. And I also want to acknowledge Pennsylvania State Rep. Latasha Mays. You all are in for a wonderful evening this evening, and there are some wonderful folks who made this possible. So at first, I'd like to acknowledge our co-chairs, Annie Westbrook and Steve Harms. If you could please stand up. Thank you so much for your leadership and all you've done to ensure that we're going to have a wonderful evening here tonight. Next, I'd like to ask for every member of the host committee. There's a lot of folks. If you could please stand up to be acknowledged. If you served on the host committee. Thank you for all you've done. Thank you so much. We could not have done this night without you. And now I'd just like to take a moment to recognize if you are a faculty or staff member of the Neighborhood Academy, please stand or wave. These are the individuals who get it done day in, day out. And I couldn't be more grateful and thankful for our team. Thank you all for your unwavering commitment to our students. Truly appreciate it. Next, I'd like to introduce a dear friend of mine, Paul O'Neill Jr., who's a wonderful individual whose parents had the idea to intersect both intellect with courageous conversations, whose memory of Paul O'Neill Sr. that we truly appreciate and will always remember, and whose mother ensures that we are well-keeping of our students, our mission, and our school. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Paul O'Neill Jr. to come to the stage, please.
What a crowd. Good evening. My name is Paul O'Neill Jr. It's such an honor to be here tonight to support the amazing work of the Neighborhood Academy and to learn from our speaker, Anthony Ray Hinton. My parents are so proud of this affiliation, with my mother, Nancy, providing continued support, and my father, Paul Sr., who passed in 2020, still inspiring your journey to one by one thriving for every child. With my involvement in the Pittsburgh Futures Collaborative, I've been fortunate to work with some incredible leaders in the city of Pittsburgh, including Mayor Gainey. Appreciate that the mayor's here tonight, who is personally leading profoundly important work to help us learn to eliminate violence in the city. Some of those people are here tonight, eager to learn from Mr. Hinton's lessons we can apply to building a world where every individual is supported in nonviolent life and where our systems of prevention and policing undergo fundamental cultural shifts. The work of the mayors leading in the Southside Hilltop aims to create the systems that enable universal nonviolence. With zero violence, we don't only eliminate the victims, we eliminate the trauma in the people who've committed crime, and we eliminate the risks to people like Mr. Hinton, who are unjustly accused. The Pittsburgh Futures Collaborative shares the mayor's vision of a region where every individual is safe, welcomed, and thriving. In this spirit, I would like to welcome Mr. Hinton to Pittsburgh and hope that the example he sets serves to support this vision for everyone. welcome Mr. Hinton.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to say good evening. I am not going to recognize anybody. Mr. William and Mr. O'Neill have done an excellent job, and I'm from the South. I belong to a Southern Baptist church. And in the Southern Baptist church, when you call one name and you forget to call the other name, that person is mad with you for the rest of their life. And so I've learned to call no name. But I will say thank you to the Neighborhood Academy. Today I had the opportunity to go to the school and see for myself. And I want to commend the teachers, the principals. I want to commend the young men and women that are attending that school. If I had to give you a grade, you would get an A+. I come to Pittsburgh with truth. I am a man who believes in truth. I believe that truth will set all us free. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story that too often is in our justice system. And at the age of 29, and I'm going to say what I told the young men and young women today, I was the best 29-year-old looking man you could ever see. The beard was black, and it seems to have turned color. But I am still the same individual inside. I never will forget on one of the hottest days that I could recall, in the month of July, I woke up that morning like every other morning. About 11 o'clock, my mother was in the kitchen prepared to make some lemonade. And when I thought my mother had finished making this lemonade, I went in to get a glass. I poured myself a glass of lemonade, and before I could finish pouring it, my mother asked me, "Are you going to revival tonight?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." For in the South, we say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, sir, out of pure respect. And as I got that glass of lemonade, I walked on out the door. About 15 minutes later, I brought the empty glass back into the kitchen. My mother was still in the kitchen, and she looked at me and she said, "What time do revival start tonight?" I said, 7 o'clock, Mama. And she looked at that old clock on the wall and she said, "Well, you got time to go out there and cut that grass." I dropped my head and I looked at my mother and I gave her that baby look, for I am the baby of 10. And I looked at my mother and I said, "Mama, I promise you I will cut that grass tomorrow." And my mother looked at me and she said, "I'm trying my best to see how that you'll cut the grass tomorrow after me telling you to go cut the grass." And finally she looked at me and she said, "Boy, go out there and cut that grass." I goes outside and I fire up the old lawnmower. 25 minutes into cutting the grass, I just happened to look up. And there stood two white gentlemen that I never seen before. I cut the lawnmower off and I said, "Can I help you?" One of the gentlemen replied, "We are detectives from the Birmingham Police Department." I said, "Okay, how can I help you?" He said, "We're looking for Anthony Ray Hinton." And I replied, "That would be me. How can I help you?" He said, "We have a warrant for your arrest." And I said, what are the charges? He said, we will explain that to you later, but right now, we want you to put your hands behind your back. I complied. I put my hands behind my back. They put the handcuffs on me, proceeded to put me in the police car. And I said, hold up. At least allow me the opportunity to go in and tell my mother I'm being arrested for something. One of the detectives said, we can't let you go back inside. And once he said that, we argued for about maybe a minute, and finally, the other detective said, let him go in and tell his mother he being arrested. I goes in and I just show my mother the handcuff, and like any good mother, she begins to scream and holler, what are those handcuffs doing on my baby? One of the detectives said, take him out while I stay in here and talk to his mother. A few minutes later, he comes out and we proceeded to go to the Birmingham County Jail. And on our way there, the detective that wasn't driving turned around and said, Anthony, do you own a firearm? And I said, no. I said, but my mother has an old Smith & Wesson that she keeps around the house for snakes. Once I revealed that information to these detectives, they dropped me off at a substation, went back to my mother home and told her about a gun that I had informed them that she owned. My mother gave them the gun with one condition, bring it back. They dropped back at the substation, picked me up, and we proceeded to go to the county jail once again. And on our way there, I must have asked these detectives at least 50 times, why am I being arrested? They never would say anything. And as they drove a little farther, I said it perhaps a little louder and a little angrier than I should have. I said, detective, why am I being arrested? This seemed to set the detective off that wasn't driving. He turned around, he said, you want to know why we arrested you? I said, yes. He said, we're going to charge you with first-degree robbery, first-degree kidnap, and first-degree attempted murder. I said, oh, you got the wrong person. I haven't done any of that. He said, let me tell you something right now. I don't care whether you did it or didn't do it, but I'm going to make sure you found guilty of it. I said, for a crime I didn't commit? He said, you must have a hearing problem. Didn't I just tell you I don't care whether you did it or didn't do it? He turned back around, and as they drove a little farther, he looked back at me and he said, by the way, there's 5 things that are going to convict you. Would you like to know what they are? And I said, yes. He said, number 1, you're black. Number 2, a white man is going to say you shot him, whether you shot him or not. Believe me, I don't care. He said, number 3, you're going to have a white prosecutor. Number 4, you're going to have a white judge. And number 5, you're going to have an all-white jury. And he said, do you know what that spells? And he repeated the word conviction, 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 conviction. And by that time, we arrived at the Birmingham County Jail. They put me on a holding cell. I was in there for about 2.5 hours. And this detective came. I jumped up. And I said, detective, if you don't mind, tell me the date and the time this crime took place. He goes through his note. He tells me the date. And I said, thank God. But when he told me the time, I said, thank you, Jesus. I said, thank you, Jesus, because I knew on that particular date and that particular time, I was at work, but more important to me, my supervisor was white. And I figured once he go out there and talk to my white supervisor, he would come back and say, Mr. Hinton, we made a mistake, you're free to go. About 5 hours later, he comes back, and I jump up again, and he looks at me, and he said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we no longer going to charge you with first-degree robbery, first-degree kidnap, first-degree attempted murder. Your alibi checks out. He said, but we have decided that we're going to charge you with 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. I said, but I haven't killed anyone. And as I was trying to convince this detective that I could never take another human life, he put his hands up as to say, be quiet. I stopped talking. He looked at me, and he said, since you are being honest with me, let me be honest with you. I truly believe you didn't commit the crime. So why don't you take this rap for one of your homeboys who truly committed the crime? I looked at that detective and I said, Detective, there's not a homeboy in this world that I would take a rap for like this. That detective walked out and shut the door. I goes before a judge. A judge called my name. He said, Anthony Ray Hinton, do you know what you're being charged with? I said, yes, Your Honor. He said, do you have a lawyer? I said, no, Your Honor. Can you afford a lawyer? I said, no, Your Honor. He looks back in his courtroom. He called this lawyer up front and tells this lawyer that he wanted him to represent me on 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. And that lawyer said these words, I did not go to law school to do pro bono work. I looked up at the lawyer and I said, sir, would it make a difference to you if I told you that I was innocent? That lawyer looked at me and he said, the problem with that statement, all of y'all is always doing something. And the moment you get caught, you cry you didn't do it. That is the lawyer that I had to somehow try and convince that I was innocent. But more important, this is the lawyer that I needed to give me his best. That lawyer did enough to make it legal and to get me found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree capital murder. I never will forget the jury came in and handed the bailiffs a note. The bailiff handed it to the judge. The judge said, all rise. I stands up. The judge unfolded the note and he said, Anthony Ray Hinton, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers. And it is the order of this court that I sentence you to death. And that judge had the audacity to say, may God have mercy on your soul. But just when I thought that was enough, the prosecution could be heard over the courtroom saying, we didn't get the right nigger today, but at least we got a nigger off the street. And on December the 17th, 1986, they transported me to Holman Correction Facility, where I would be housed on death row. Once I got to Holman Correction Facility, I had made up my mind that I wasn't going to talk to anyone. And for 3 years, I didn't talk to my mother. I didn't talk to my best friend. I was angry. I was disappointed. All of my life, my mother brought me up to believe in God. She told me that God sits high, but he looks low. He will destroy, but yet he will defend. And I wanted to know where was God when I was being lied on. Where was God when I was being falsely accused of a crime that he knew and I know that I didn't commit. I even asked God, what did I do so bad that you would allow me to come to this hell? And I looked and I said, God, don't live here anymore. I didn't say that I didn't believe in God. I didn't say that I didn't love God. I was angry with God. And I felt that at the time that I needed this God, he was nowhere to be found. For 3 solid years, every time I wanted to know something, I would take a piece of paper and a pen and give it to the guards. I never would say a word. But going into the 4th year, at exactly 1 a.m. in the morning, I woke up to the sound of a grown man crying. A man that I had lived by for 4 years and never asked him his name or where he was from. But my mother had taught me compassion. My mother told me no matter what one does in life, they still deserve compassion. And that compassion made me get out of that bunk bed that was too small for me. And I walked up to the bars and I said, sir, do you need me to call and get the correction officer back here? It took this man a while to reply, but he finally replied and said, no. I just received word that my mother passed. And my heart went out for this man. And I told this man, if I can do anything for you, if you need me to write a letter, if you need me to do anything for you, all you have to do is ask, and I will do it. I sit on that bunk bed and I close my eyes as tight as I can close them. I closed my eyes and I said, God, if you're listening, I need you to give me the ability to leave this hell. And it was as though I've always had this fascination with the Queen of England. Oh, it ain't that kind. For some reason, at that moment and at that time, I wanted to go and talk to the Queen. I closed my eyes as tight as I could close them, and I imagined going to England. The guard stopped me, and I told him that I was there to see the Queen. They goes in and tell the Queen that I'm there, and she invite me in. Once I go in, we sit down, we conversate, we talk about Prince Harry, Prince William, we talk about the tragedy of Prince Di. And for whatever reason, after that conversation, the Queen stands up and she looks at me and she says, Mr. Hinton, would you like some tea? And I tell the Queen I would love some tea. And she says, what would you like in your tea? And I tell her a spot of lemon. She held the butler to go out and squeeze this lemon. I put it in my tea. We conversate some more. I stands up and I tell the Queen, I must be leaving. She looks at me and she says, Mr. Hinton, will you come back? And I told the Queen I would love to come back. Now that I realize that I can leave this hell anytime I want to, I did something next that at the age of 12 I said I would never do. And at the age of 12 I said I would never marry. But I decided that I would get married, but I didn't just marry anybody. I married the beautiful and talented actress Halle Berry. Halle Berry and I stayed married for 15 long years up here. And if there's a thing called a perfect wife, Halle Berry was the perfect wife. But she didn't say nothing but yes, dear, and okay, dear. Whatever you want to do is all right with me, dear. And then going into the 16th year, the warden decided that he would reward death row inmates for good behavior. He showed us a film, and for the first time, I laid eyes on Sandra Bullock in this movie called Speed. I watched this lady drive this bus around and around and around. And if I'm gonna be honest, and I told you I believe in truth, I was building my nerves up to give Halle some sad news. And finally, when I built my nerves up, I looked at Halle and I said, Halle, I'm going to divorce you and marry Sandra Bullock. True to who she was, she looked at me and she said, okay, dear. And by that time, a guard came to my door and he said, Anthony, I've been calling you for 15 minutes, look like. I said, I'm sorry, I was gone, what is it? He said, you have a legal visit. I said, but I don't have an attorney. The state of Alabama don't give you an attorney during post-conviction. He said, Anthony, well, somebody is out there pretending to be a lawyer. Get dressed and go see who it is. I goes out there and there's this lawyer from Boston. I asked this lawyer who in Boston know me that they would send him to Alabama to represent me, and he tells me a man by the name of Brian Stevenson. And I reply, who is Brian Stevenson? He tells me about the work that Brian Stevenson does in Montgomery. He tells me how great Brian Stevenson is. And I looked at this lawyer and I said, Brian Stevenson cannot be that great, for he have already made one fundamental mistake. And he looked at me and he said, what is the mistake? I said, let me make sure. You did say you from Boston, correct? He said, yes. I said, had this great Brian Stevenson checked with me before he sent you here, he would have found out that I am a beloved Yankee fan. And there's no way a Yankee fan and a Boston fan could ever do anything together. I said, but for your sake, I'm willing to put my personal feeling aside and let you work on my case. I tell you this story because I wanted this lawyer to realize that I was human. When you get convicted of a heinous crime, society calls you every name that they can think of. And I wanted this lawyer to realize that I was a human being who had a sense of humor, who had feelings like any other human being. The lawyer laughed and I laughed. And the lawyer promised me that he would do everything he could to try to win my freedom. Every year, this lawyer would come back to Alabama and tell me what he had found out. But in the fourth year, this lawyer came and he said, Anthony, I can get you a life without parole. And I looked at this lawyer and I said, life without parole is for guilty people, not innocent people. I said, you asking me to stand up and tell the victim family that I took their loved one's life when I didn't? I said, but more important to me, you asking me to stand up and tell my mother that she brought up a son that is capable of killing someone? I said, I could never hurt my mother that way. I said, my mother brought me up to always stand up for what I believe in. And I believe in truth. I said, yes, we all is going to die one day. I'm not ready to die, and I don't want to die for a crime I didn't commit, but if that be the case, so be it. I said, if the state of Alabama is hell-bent on executing me for a crime they know that I did not commit, so be it. There's nothing I can do about it. I said, but at the moment, I need a lawyer who believes in me. I need a lawyer who is willing to go to jail for me if necessary. The fact that you're trying to get me a life without parole tells me that you don't believe in me, and therefore, I have no choice but to fire you. The lawyer looked at me and said, are you serious? I said, yes. I said, but I do want to thank you for what you was trying to do and what you did do. And as that lawyer was walking out the front door, I was headed back toward the cell, and something in my mind said, you got to be the dumbest person in the world. For you fired the only lawyer that you had, but just as that thought entered my mind, another thought said you did the right thing. Always stand up for what you believe in. And as I got back toward the cell, a guard was watching TV. I stopped and I said, what are you watching? He said, I'm watching this lawyer out of Montgomery talk about the death penalty. And I asked him, can I stand there a moment? And he said, yes. And lo and behold, it was Brian Stevenson talking about why we don't need a death penalty in this country. And as I listened to Mr. Stevenson, I knew this is the lawyer that I need to somehow try and get on my case. I goes into that cell and I write him a letter. I thank him for sending the lawyer from Boston. I just told him it didn't work out. And I said, Mr. Stevenson, I know you get a lot of letters from inmates saying that they're innocent, but I am truly innocent. I would like to ask a favor of you. I would like for you to read my transcript, and if you find one thing in my transcript that points to my guilt, do not worry about becoming my lawyer. Do not send me another lawyer. I am perfectly prepared to die for a crime that I didn't commit. 3 months later, I get a response saying that he would read my transcript, and exactly 6 months later, he had made arrangements to come see me. The day that he said he was coming, he came. The day that I shook this man's hand, I could feel something special about this particular lawyer. I realized that God had sent me his number one lawyer. We sit down and we talked about our childhood, and finally I looked at Mr. Stevenson and I said, Mr. Stevenson, if no two guns is alike, I already know that the state of Alabama is telling a lie. The gun that they got from my mother's home have not been fired in over 25 years. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I need to ask a favor of you. And he said, what is the favor? I said, I need you to hire a ballistic expert. And Mr. Stevenson looked at me and he said, well, I was going to do that anyway. And I looked at Mr. Stevenson. And I said, Mr. Stevenson, I'm not explaining myself right. I said, Mr. Stevenson, I need you to hire a white man. And I need this white man to be the best of the best. I need this white man to believe in the death penalty. But above all of that, I need this white man to just tell the truth. Mr. Stevenson looked at me and he said, why do he have to be white? And why do he have to be from the South? And I said, Mr. Stevenson, I lived in the South all of my life. And the South was only recognized one of their own. I said, Mr. Stevenson, you can go out and get the best white female in the country. Her word is no good on the witness stand in Alabama. I said, Mr. Stevenson, you definitely cannot get a person of color. Their word is definitely no good on the witness stand in Alabama. I said, Mr. Stevenson, for me to have a chance, it has to be a Southern white man. Mr. Stevenson left that day and told me that he would do his best to find this particular Southern white man. About 3 months later, I get word to call my attorney. He informed me that he found 3 of the world-renowned experts. 2 of them live in Texas and 1 of them live in Virginia. He informed me that these 3 men was the best in the country. He said each one of these men has a conviction rate, testifying for the prosecution only. They have never lost a case. He said, are you sure that these are the men that you want me to get? And I said, Mr. Stevenson, did you remember to ask them would they just tell the truth? And he said, each one of them have assured me that they would tell exactly what the evidence shows. If it's in your favor, they will stand up and say it. If it's against you, they will say it. And I remember saying, Mr. Stevenson, if you can afford it, hire those 3 experts. They came to Alabama one at a time. They did their testing, and when the last one had did their testing, they all got together and told Mr. Stevenson that the bullets did not even come close to being a match. The state of Alabama had every intention of executing me for a crime they knew that I didn't commit. The state of Alabama was going to get away with it had not Mr. Stevenson came into my life when he did. As I began to sit in that cell, I began to wonder, what was it that made the state of Alabama do what they did? Why is it that the state of Alabama was hell-bent on executing me for a crime that they knew that I didn't commit? We take this evidence to the Attorney General, a man by the name of Bill Pryor. And Bill Pryor was quoted as saying, as far as he was concerned, the right man had been convicted and he refused to take 1 hour to re-examine the bullets. He said it would be a waste of time, but more important, it would be a waste of the taxpayer money to re-examine the bullets. And for not doing his job, George W. Bush appointed him to a federal lifetime appointment. I goes before 2 more attorney general, and they too refused to take 1 hour to re-examine the bullets. I filed my case to the United States Supreme Court. 2 years after filing my case to the United States Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court did something that it have never done in the history of the Supreme Court. All 9 justices ruled in my favor that I was entitled to a new trial. They sent the case back to Alabama. We go before the trial judge. The prosecution walk in and say, Your Honor, it is with great sadness that I inform you that we cannot find the gun to this case. Your Honor said, what you mean you can't find it? And they said, we believe that Mr. Stevenson never did turn the gun in once they examined it. And like any good lawyer, Mr. Stevenson had the paperwork to show that he turned it in and he handed it to the judge. And the judge looked at it and she said, yes, he turned it in. It even have your signature on it. She gave them 60 days to find the gun. And while we thought they was looking for the gun, we go back to a courtroom in 60 days. The judge asked them, did they find the gun? The prosecution said, Your Honor, we did. But once again, it was great sadness that we have to inform you that we cannot find the bullets to the gun. Again, she gave them 60 days, and while we thought they was looking for the bullets, we found out that the prosecution had asked one of his old experts to come in and re-examine the bullets one last time. And he is quoted as saying in the Birmingham News, the bullets did not match the way they did 30 years ago. But the bullets match exactly the way they did 30 years ago. They didn't match then, they wasn't going to match 30 years later. I sit in a 5x7. All because I was born poor and black. I sit on death row for 30 years with a death sentence over my head every morning and every night. All because we have a system that treats you better if you're rich and guilty opposed to if you're poor and innocent. And on re-examining the bullets, the prosecution in Alabama notified the judge that they was dropping all charges against me. And on April the 3rd, 2015, for the first time in 30 years, I walked out of prison, not as a free man, because I would never be free again, because they took my freedom for me. Here I am 9 years later. The state of Alabama have not given me one penny for the 30 years they took from me. The state of Alabama have not apologized to me for the 30 years they took from me. But I come here tonight to tell you that I forgave those men that got together and did this to me. I forgave those men not because they emailed me, texted me, called me, or wrote me and asked for forgiveness. I forgave those men not so they could sleep good at night. I forgave those men so I could sleep good at night. While I was there on death row, I did everything possible that I could keep my hope alive. I did everything I could to make the men around me understand that although society have sent you here, it don't mean that you have to stop living because you're here. I wrote the warden and I asked the warden, could I start my own book club? I wanted to start a book club for a specific reason. And for those of you who read my book, There was one particular man that I wanted to invite to join my book club. But he was a young man that was at the age of 19 who belongs to the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama. His father was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. His father sent him out one Saturday morning and gave him and two other clans a direct order to kill the first African-American male that they came across. They came across a 19-year-old mentally retarded male walking down the street. They befriended him and got him in the car, and they stabbed him over 65 times. And that didn't seem to satisfy Henry. Henry got out of his car and threw the rope over the power line and hung this black male. But that didn't satisfy him. He went in his pocket and got his knife out and cut off the black male's genitals, and that seemed to satisfy Henry. But I come to Pittsburgh to ask you, people love to say that it takes a village to raise a child. I want to know, where was that village when this young boy was being taught to hate? I wanted to know, where was that village when he went to school and the teacher was allowing him to say hateful things? True, like politicians, we love to say sweet things off our lips. But when it come time to do it, we're nowhere to be found. And I just wonder, where was that village? Well, that village came when they apprehended him, put him on trial, and that village sent in a jury box. And that village said, we find you guilty of capital murder. That village said, this would be a better world if you wasn't in it. And they sentenced my friend to death. And when he got to death row, I didn't know who he was. But again, my mother had taught me compassion. And when I learned the nature of his crime, I asked him, I said, Henry, we've been talking, but you didn't tell me who you were. I said, Henry, why you didn't tell me who you were? And Henry had no response. I asked him again, he still didn't have no response. But more important than that, I had to ask myself a question. And the question that I asked myself was, did it matter who he was? And if I had to be true to me, and it didn't matter what he had done, it didn't matter to me. All I knew that was a human being. And I wanted to show Henry that we is nothing like you had been taught. And every day I talked to Henry. And I told Henry, I said, in these conversations, I want you to talk how you want. Whatever word you want to use it. Henry, I want you to be who you really think you are. And I noticed over the years, Henry began to change his vocabulary. I noticed over the years, Henry began to laugh more. And I got to thinking to myself, here's a 19-year-old kid, never had the opportunity to make a decision for himself until he got on death row. Must have been overwhelming to him that now he can make a decision without his father telling him what to do and how to do it. And when I started my book club, I wanted Henry to be the number one person that I asked to join. Once I got permission from the warden, I started my book club, and I put Henry down, and Henry came, and the book that I chose was specifically for Henry. I chose James Baldwin, Go Tell It on the Mountain. I wanted Henry to read this book. I wanted Henry to realize that we are authors, we are doctors, we are everything. And Henry read this book. And to my surprise, when it came time to discover and talk about the book, Henry had 6 pages. I said, Henry, did you write a book? You got 6 pages? Back and front. Henry said, yeah, Ray, one of the best books I ever read. I said, I'm glad you said that. I said, do you know who James Baldwin is? He said, yeah, I realized he was a black man. I said, yes. Henry said, Ray, can I be honest with you? I said, sure. He said, I didn't know black people wrote books. And I said, Henry, I didn't know Ku Klux Klans would read books. I said, Henry, I want you to know that we are everything. We electricians, we doctors, we nurses, we bus drivers, we everything. I said, but Henry, you've been living in a world that your father, your mother, your community didn't want you to see that we are exactly everything white people are. I said, Henry, tell me, what did you get out of the book? And Henry said, Ray, James Baldwin had been to the war. He came back and he wanted to be equal. And he thought that he could go into stores and like any other citizen, but he couldn't. And I seen the hurt in Henry's eyes. I said, Henry, it is okay. I said, Henry, I'm glad that you read the book, and I'm glad that is what you got out of the book. And as time went by, Henry and I would stay up all night and talk. And then one night, Henry said one of the most ridiculous things that he could say. He said, Ray, I wish that your mother and my mother could have a cake cook-off test. I said, Henry, you really don't lose your mind over there. I said, Henry, your mother could never cook a cake like my mother. I said, Henry, I don't mean no disrespect. I said, but my mother, I said, Henry, I've been here now 22 years. I said, Henry, at night I can still taste the red velvet on my tongue. Can you taste the red velvet on your tongue? And he said, no, Ray. I said, that's because your mama can't cook like mama. You see, even on death row, I wanted every man to laugh. I tell you this because I want you to laugh. We are spending so much time doing everything but laugh. I believe laughter is the best medicine anyone could ever take. And when I came home, I realized that America had stopped laughing. And besides telling my story, I wanted to make people laugh again, because I used to love going to a park and listening at the kids laugh. They didn't care who was playing with them. There was nothing more beautiful, more sounding to the ear than young children laughing and playing in the park. And I've always captured that. And I always felt that laughter is a beautiful thing. And as time went by, Henry's mother came to the visiting yard to see him. And as she came to the visiting yard to see him, she passed away on the visiting yard. She had a mass heart attack. That day, we rallied around Henry. We told him how sorry we was for his loss. We told him, like anyone else, we all must die. And I said, Henry, I know you loved your mother, and I know that you hate that you can't be there for your father as well as your relatives. I said, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. If there's anything you want to talk about, please feel free. A few months later, exactly 3 months later, his father came to the visiting yard, and he too passed of a mass heart attack. I looked at Henry and I said, Henry, I could be wrong, but you know me, I say what I feel. I don't mean to hurt your feeling, but it seemed like God was telling your parents, since you sent your son to death row, it is only fitting that they die on death row as well. I said, Henry, I never known any parents or visitors come here and die but your two parents. I said, Henry, but even with your father, you have my deepest sympathy. And I never will forget. Henry asked me, after I said that, he said, even after what my father said to you? I said, Henry, he didn't say it to me, he said it to you. You see, one day his father came to see him and he was on the visiting yard, and Henry begged for me to come to his table. I goes to his table and Henry introduced me to his father as his friend. I reached my hand out to shake his father's hand, but his father wouldn't shake my hand. And after visiting I was over with, I looked at Henry and he had this sad look on his face. And I said, Henry, what is wrong? Took him a while. And he said, my father said, as long as he come here to see me, do not ever invite a nigger to his table. And I said, Henry, that is your father, cancer or hate. If he want to die with that cancer called hate, let him die with it, but you don't have to. Henry, you have a choice now to be who you truly want to be. That choice is up to you. And when Henry thought about it, he looked at me, he said, Ray, I don't want to be nothing like my father. And I said, good for you. 3 years later, the state of Alabama said Henry an execution date. Henry wrote the warden and asked the warden, could I be with him in his time on the extra yard? The warden told him I could. He said, but exactly 10:30, I would have to leave. We sit on the visiting yard all that day. They gave us some change to get snacks and sodas out of the machine, and I wanted Henry to laugh all day. I didn't want Henry to know tonight is the last day of your life. I didn't want him to think about it. And I made Henry laugh and laugh and laugh. And exactly 7:30, they brought Henry his final meal. He took the lid off the tray, and a little bit of 6-ounce steak was on it. I said, Henry, that's what you want to eat for your last meal? And he said, yes, Ray. I said, oh, you ready to die? He said, why would you say that? I said, that's all you want is a 6-ounce steak? He said, yes, Ray. He said, can I ask you something? I already knew what he was finna ask me. I said, yes, Henry, you can ask me whatever you want. He said, if it come your time, what is it that you gonna want? I said, I'm glad you asked me that, Henry. I said, what I want, they're gonna have to go to the forest and get it. And when they come all the way back from the forest, I'm gonna say, that ain't what I told y'all I want. I said, they're gonna have to go back to the forest, and every time they come back, it ain't what I want. I said, Henry, in other words, if there's a law that says they can't execute me until I eat my last meal, I said, bro, I'm gonna be here forever. Because no matter what they bring, it ain't gonna be what I want. And Henry looked at me smiling and he said, Ray, only you would think of something like that. Exactly at 10:30 they came, and for the first time in 15 years, we was allowed to hug one another. I hugged this man and I said, Henry, I want you to know that I love you. I said, Henry, I want you to know that I pass no judgment on you. I said, but Henry, I pray that you had the good sense to ask God for forgiveness. And Henry, if you did, I truly believe that God is a forgiving God. And I said, Henry, after tonight, I truly believe you and I will meet again. I said, Henry, I want you to know that the last 15 years has been the best 15 years getting to know you. And Henry looked at me and he said, Ray, I want to thank you for being my friend. I want to thank you for not passing judgment on me. And I want to ask you to forgive me for the words that I used to say out of my mouth. I said, Henry, I forgave you before you said them. That's why I told you to say whatever you wanted to say. I said, Henry, I wish and hope that you know that one day I truly believe we will see each other. And Henry looked at me and he said, Ray, you know what? I truly wish that we had met earlier. I said, oh, no, you don't. I said, oh, no, Henry. I said, for whatever reason, God put us here to meet. Let's be well enough with that. We embraced again, and I said, Godspeed. They took him away. They shaved his head. They put him on new clothes. They dropped the mic down and asked him, did he have any final words? And Henry was quoted as saying, all of my life, I was taught to hate. My mother taught me to hate. My father taught me to hate. My community taught me to hate. The very people that they taught me to hate are the very one for 15 years who have shown me nothing but love. And as I leave this world tonight, I leave this world now knowing what real love feels like. And they executed my friend Henry. I tell you that story because I came home to what appeared to be more hatred than I ever can imagine. I truly believe that we must stand up to hatred. I truly believe that we must allow ourselves to have an open and honest conversation about race. And once we have that open and honest conversation about race, you would realize that we have so much in common. And the few things that we disagree on, we can work ourselves around it. I don't know about anyone else, but I thank God for my mother. I came home. I don't hate the men that did this to me. They are in bad shape and health-wise. A few of them have passed away. But every night, those that are still living, I find myself praying for them because that is the way my mother brought me up to be. I never will forget. My mother told me that there will be people hate you simply because of the color of your skin. She said, I want you to remember this. You are not responsible for how people treat you, but you are responsible for how you treat people. And every morning I wake up with a smile. I realize that God has given me another day, and I'm not going to waste it by hating anyone. I'm going to enjoy it. As I looked at the school this day, I realized that those kids are looking at us for leadership. We have a responsibility to teach them, to show them that this world is big enough for all of us. I want you to know that the 30 years that I was on death row didn't make me angry. It taught me, it motivated me to be the man that I am today. Yes, I have bad days, but I don't let my bad days make me say anything that I regret. I truly believe that God made me exactly who he wanted me to be, and he have given me exactly what he wants me to have. No matter where you are, I truly believe that you have the power to reach out and help someone. Who would have thought that being on death row, I would be able to start the only book club in the United States when it comes to death row. Who would have thought that I would be able to change a man that thought he hated me? I stood up and showed him that hate does no one any good. I leave you with this. I come here to Pittsburgh to ask you a question. What would you do if they came for you? What would you do if you didn't have the money to hire decent defense? What would you do if you passed a polygraph test, but they cared more about the color of your skin than the results of that test? What would you do if you was found guilty and sentenced to death? What would you do if you had to spend the rest of your life in a 5x7? What would you do if you've been waiting all your life to die and finally one day you were set free? Who would you be? What would you be? And then finally, since the state of Alabama, since the United States of America has the death penalty, and since you, the voters, were seeking my life, I come to Pittsburgh. Since you believe in justice, since you were seeking justice, I ask someone to stand up tonight and tell me, where's my justice? Where? Where do I get justice? Don't I deserve justice? For you were seeking justice with my life. And just because it was proven that I didn't do it, no one have had the decency to even say, Mr. Hinton, we're sorry. If we're going to have a death penalty, we need to also have some type of justice for those men and those women who are in prison and they didn't do it. Perhaps you cannot give me the answer that I need tonight. But perhaps you need to think about it. And if you can think, where is my justice? And where can I get justice? Please go on to eji.org and email me where I can get justice. Because I deserve justice just as you were seeking justice. Thank you so much for having me.
Mr. Hinton, you've brought us together, and there are a number of people who want to speak with you. And I realize I'm the one individual between them and you. So I'm just going to ask you one question. I'd love for you to have a seat as well.
Okay.
After being incarcerated on death row for nearly 30 years, enduring treatment that no man or woman should ever endure. Confined to a 5-by-7 cell, breakfast at 2 in the morning, lunch at 10 a.m., dinner at 2 p.m. Upon your work with Brian Stevenson and being released from jail, you're greeted by your family. There's a large group of individuals taking pictures, wanting to hear from you. And you turn to the crowd and you say, "The sun does shine." Can you take us to that moment and let us know what you're thinking and feeling at that moment?
At that moment, it was bitter and sweet. The bitter part was that my mother had passed, and she was not there to welcome me home. And my mother and I had always depended and counted on each other. And while I was on death row, every time I would talk to my mother, she only had one question: when are they going to let you go? And I always responded with, "Mama, they're working on it soon." And so when I walked out of that jail, knowing that my mother wasn't there, I felt sad. But as I went on out, the sun was shining as bright as I ever seen it shine. And it was as though it was a spotlight that was on me and myself only. I looked over there at my best friend, Lester, and Mr. Stevenson, and it didn't appear that the sun was shining on them. And as I took to the mic or the podium, I said, "The sun does shine," because the sun hadn't shined on me for 30 years. I lived in solitary confinement for 30 years. And solitary confinement is designed to break you, but I refused to be broken. I kept my faith. That faith allowed me to have hope. And I didn't just have hope in myself. I believe that hope gave me the strength to believe that someday I would be set free and the truth would come out. And on April the 15th, April the 3rd, I walked out after spending 30 years of pure hell on 5-by-7. And it was as though God made that sun shine especially on me and no one else. And I had always said that even on death row, I said, when I get out, I'm going to write a book. But I had never thought of the title of the book until the sun was shining on me. And I said, the sun does shine, and I wanted to write that book to let people know that even though your life may be full of rain, hold on, the sun will shine.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we're going to open up questions to our members of the audience. Microphones will be passed around. If you could wave your hand if you have a question for Mr. Hinton. Yes, indeed.
Before you ask me the question, I noticed on the program they didn't clarify I charge $100 per question.
Well, that's okay, because before I ask you the question, I want to give you a hug first.
Absolutely.
Can I do that?
Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to try to ask this question without crying now. How were you able to keep that compassion within your soul to pass that on to someone else who you knew hated the very existence of you?
I think it was, I don't think, it's the way that my mother brought all of us up. My mother was a Christian lady. She believed in God, and she brought us up with nothing but love. We never had money, but one thing I can boast about, brag about, is that my mother gave each and every one of unconditional love. And my mom always told me that if I find someone who didn't have love, to give them some of my love. And I don't know this for a fact, but I truly believe that God looked around the world and he realized that there was one human being that had enough love that they could give that young man that was full of hatred. And I was the person that God knew that I could change him and give him love. And I found it a joy. I found it a privilege. Coming up, learning that everybody deserves compassion, learning that everybody don't have love, learning that you can change people's lives by loving them when they don't love themselves. And so I give that credit to my mother. My faith teaches me God is about love, and everything he do for us is out of pure love. And everything I did for that young man was out of pure love. And so by God giving me the strength to do it every day, to forget about myself, forget about my problem, forget about that I was on the road. My job was to try and make not only just that particular individual feel love, but all the other men on the road. I gave him as much love as I possibly could. And so that's how I did it.
Mr. Hinton, in your book, you talk a lot about your court-appointed lawyer, the prosecutor, and the judge. You've already said tonight that no one from Alabama has apologized, let alone done anything more than that. Have you reconciled with any of the major players in your prosecution, whether your own lawyer or the prosecutor or the judge? And if not, how do you feel about them today?
I love them today more than I did back then. There was a time that the human factor in me, when I first got to death row, all I could think about, how can I escape? And I wanted to escape because of the human factor. And I wanted to choke the life out of each and every one of them. And I didn't want to escape and use a gun. I didn't want to use anything but my bare hands. And I wanted them to see me the last person they saw on earth before I choked the life out of them. That was the human factor of me. But that wasn't who I really am. And as I sit there for years, 3 years at the most, hating those men, I realized something, that I had given those men far too much power over me. They had taken my life from society, but I was not going to relinquish who I truly am. And I decided that, hey, I'm going to take my life back, my joy. I've always said, the world didn't give me this joy, and the world can't take it away. Regardless of where I was, and true, I was in solitary confinement, and true, I looked back every day and thought about those men, but I began to pray for those men. I began to say, Lord, if it be your will, bless those men. Whatever they felt that they had to do, it was okay with me. They had to lie. They knew they lied. And so my job was to find a way to live until help arrived. And I truly believed that God would not allow me to die for a crime I didn't commit. And so I did everything possible. I prayed a prayer. And I want to say this to those of you who truly believe in God. I prayed a prayer of forgiveness. And I asked God to remove any hatred from around my heart that I had for those men. But more important, I never did ask God to free me. I thought if I asked God to free me, that would be the most selfish thing I could ever do. And I realized, had I asked God to free me, he could have freed me in death. And that wasn't the way I wanted to be freed. I say that because I want people to realize that you got to be very careful what you ask God for. For he is a forgiving God, and he is a gracious God, and he will give you exactly what you asked him for, only to show you that wasn't what you needed. And so I prayed a prayer of truth. And I prayed that prayer one time because if anything I believe in, I believe God have the best ears you can have. Whatever you whisper, whatever you say without opening your mouth, he hears it. And I prayed a prayer of innocence. And I asked God to allow the truth to come out, knowing that once the truth came out, I would come out with the truth. And so, forgiveness was not about those men. It was about me. For the first time in my life, I had to be selfish and think of myself. I wanted those men to continue to live their life, and I was determined to live the best life that I could, even if it was in a 5x7. And since I've been home, I have inquired about them. The prosecution who prosecuted me died a year before I was released. 2 other detectives have passed, and the other 3, I'm told, is dealing with old timers. They don't know who they are at times. And so, I hate that it happened, but it happened. I got some good out of it, and I'm still getting good at it. And whether you believe this or not, had it not happened, chances are I would have never met you tonight. And so that's a good blessing as well. Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions from the audience.
Good evening, Mr. Hinton. My name is Dominic Moore, over here, back here, straight ahead.
Right back here, Mr. Oh, yes, indeed. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm a junior at the Neighborhood Academy, and I just want to say, what happened to you was horrible, but I think everyone here would agree that your messages are very powerful. And my question for you today is, would you see that this is like a calling in life from God to inspire people and share your amazing story of perseverance and strength through one of what I would say probably one of the hardest things someone can endure other than death? Because, the perseverance that you had through 30 years of one of the, like I said, the hardest things someone can endure, it's just amazing and very powerful. So what you just spoke on, I just want to see, is this your calling in life, you think, from God?
I think so because, again, I was brought up, I mentioned today I always wanted to be a professional baseball player. And my mom always told me, now, boy, if you really want to make God laugh, tell him what you want to do. And so I accepted that for 9 years. God have allowed me to go all over this country. And I call it a certain way of preaching without being a preacher. Spreading the truth. And I truly believe that if ever we need to learn how to forgive one another, it is now. And if ever someone that forgave someone for what they put me through, you can look at it and say, if he can forgive those that did that to him, surely I can forgive whoever did something to me. I truly believe that everything works through God and by God, and I truly believe that he gave me the ability to sit there for 30 years to endure the hell that I went through, but he gave me a message to come out, and I wake up every morning trying my best to give that message. And more so than what happened to me, I'm trying to get people to live. I'm trying to get people to understand. Forget about what happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Enjoy life. Believe in God. Love one another. Treasure one another, because tomorrow is not promised. And so to your question, I truly believe that it is the work that God envisioned for me to do.
And now we'll take our final question from the audience.
Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story. I have not had the privilege of reading your book, but I'll start reading it tonight.
Okay.
I got my coffee. And I would like to know, what does justice look like for you? Like, what would that be?
To be honest with you, I don't think I could ever receive justice. The 30 years they've taken from me, only justice could give back, and justice don't have that authority to give me the 30 years that I lost. What man meant for bad, I truly believe that God made it great. You know, I sit here and I don't want nobody to feel sorry for me, because I had the time of my life. I married two of the most beautiful women in the world. And when I divorced them, I didn't have to pay them one dime in alimony. And every year, we get together and they'll buy me dinner. And so I have nothing to complain about. I just don't want this to continue to happen to innocent men and women, regardless of what race, regardless of what state. And what they took from me, they can't repair it, they can't give it back. I often say if they had gave me $1 million for every year that I was on death row, it still wouldn't give me back those 30 years. They are lost forever. And I say this, I hope, I pray that God is the only one that can restore those 30 years back to me. I pray that he give them back. And the day that I see God, I'm going to say, I knew you was coming, but what took you so long? Because 30 years is a long time to sit on a 5x7, not knowing whether it's raining, not knowing if the sun is shining. But I am so thankful to be alive, and I'm so blessed to be here, and I'm beyond blessed to be able to tell the story. I sit there and watch 54 men walk by my cell to their death. I had to smell the human flesh burning, and that's something that I wish on no one. But for whatever reason, for those of you who saw the movie Just Mercy, every one of those inmates that was on death row when that movie was made, I am the only one that is still alive. So I know that God had a hand in bringing me this far. And I pray every night that I do his will. I pray every night that he was continue to give me a voice to lift up, to beg, to ask whatever. And I'm not worried about justice. I ask that question because I want you, the voters, to go home and think about it. I want you to realize that you almost took an innocent man's life, and ask yourself, do we have that authority? Have God given us the authority to execute someone? Because my mother brought me up to be better than the person that mistreat me. And so when we kill someone because they killed someone, we know better than the person that killed someone. We are equal now. And so, justice.
Mr. Hinton, I want to thank you for sharing your life and being so impactful for all of us here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work that you continue to do to and through this day, and for allowing us to be a part of your story. Please join me in thanking Mr. Anthony Ray Hinton, the author of The Sun Does Shine.